each person has 2 minutes to present. So you will hear a lot of stuff, which is why I sent you the list of presenters. I sent you the list of presenters for two reasons. One, for the presenters so they know when they're ready to go so they can get ready and unmute themselves and maybe turn their video on. For the rest of you, what I would like you to do with that list is you're going to hear people talk about different ideas about what you can do with kids remotely by getting them outside. One thing I encourage with kids of all ages is to encourage them to have a wingman, a buddy, preferably a buddy in their pod. I really like them taking parents out. It's a twofer. If they go out with their parents, one, they think you're doing something as a teacher, and that's always a positive thing. But also, you know, just for safety and everything else, it's a good idea to have somebody with them. So when you listen to people speak, you're going to hear people talk about lessons that may be for an age group that you're not dealing with. You know, I'm a high school teacher, and I'll tell you the truth. I got some of these different lesson plans for kindergarten classes, and I think I can adapt them. So keep an open mind and think, wow, I could do this in a different way. And what's neat about this, you're going to hear only 2 minutes, but you have been given a link to my folder with all of these different lessons, and they all have contact information. So if you hear something neat, you can go back to it later, look at what the people gave you. Some of these people gave you great resources, 5, 6 pages of things, pictures, websites, all sorts of things to help, you know, stimulate your thinking and get kids outside. The goal of Mayo is simple. We want to make everyone in our state environmental stewards. Our methodology is try to support formal and non-formal teachers so that everybody has what they need to do that. We offer grants. We have a network of experts. We have what I think is the greatest conference in the world, which we planned extensively, and it got canceled. So we made a mini conference, and it got canceled. And now we're going to do some other stuff. If you ever watched The Holy Grail and Swamp Castle, I kept sinking and falling into the swamp. That's kind of how I feel right now. We're going to try to continue to support our cause by trying to help you as educators get as many kids outside as possible. I'm really scared with this remote learning that we'll take a step back. I have this fear. I watch my son who goes to class by basically rolling out of bed and looking at a computer all day. And it just scares me. So we thought it'd be a nice opportunity to give you some ideas to get kids outside. And I am ecstatic, this being my first week of school. I know everybody's pretty either about to go or have been going for just a short amount of time. And even the non-formal people, your life is going crazy right now. I'm really humbled that so many of you decided that this was important for you to do as well. So listen up. If you hear anything you like, write it down. Each contributor, you got 2 minutes. That worries me a little bit because I know some of you like to talk. Try to keep it to 2 minutes because we're going to value everybody's time. What I love about you, you like to talk, but on the other hand, we want to make sure we value people's time because it is that kind of crazy year. So just like speed dating, right swipe when you see something you like on the piece of paper, and later on you can go back to it. You can ask people questions, and we'll go from there. So once again, thank you everybody. Presenters, I gave you a list, so you should know kind of where you're going. I organized them by topics, and sometimes the topics don't make a lot of sense. I mean, it could be broad and some different things. So I got biology, earth science, and then just general nature skills, and all these things kind of overlap. So I apologize if I put you where you didn't think you belong. I decided not to do it by age because, like I said, I think we can do a lot of neat things age-wise. So without further ado, Beth Christensen has 3 things she's going to share with us, which means she gets a total of 6 minutes. Go.
Got this. All right, so each of these are part of extended remote units that I developed in the spring. So while they may sound a little out of context, Bill will, so I'm sure that you'll be able to access those. They were developed for secondary, but they will be certainly adaptable for all ages. So the first one is the class nature challenge, and that basically setting opportunities for your students to go outside and just challenge themselves to see how many different organisms they can find. You can set up a iNaturalist group for your class if you yourself have 50 or more of your own observations. So for older kids who have phones and can do the iNaturalist app, you can also set up a Google Docs. I have a template within that unit, that remote unit. And that template can have things like, here's the organism I found, or a picture of it, a photo of it. Here's some other organisms that might be living in that area. You can also use a umich.edu. Again, there's a link that has an urban identification. So it's urban trees, urban general plants, urban animals that students can use to try and identify things that they've found. So it's basically then allowing other students in the class to interact, to say, oh my gosh, you found a dandelion. I found 7 of them. Together we found 17. So that document can grow. Some of the other things that you can do is you can look at different areas. So you can say, oh, I'm looking at a soccer field, football field, or I'm going to a marsh. Some of the different items that I've found here, similarities between the two, have them think about, what might happen if I pull one of those organisms to each location, if it's more soccer field, football field versus marsh. So that's kind of really quick. And then they can also, this is sort of the inside portion that allows them to get a sense of place, where they can actually pull out a Michigan map, find themselves on the map, and what different bodies of water or landforms. I'm from freshwater research, so I do bodies of water, are close, are nearby, and that helps to give them a sense of place along with this diversity of organisms. So that's the first one. And then the one associated with the invasive species unit, again, fully packed remote invasive species unit. This one was developed for the spring, and the phenomenon for the unit is frogs that are, native species here, but in Arizona, they're causing huge amounts of trouble. So the spring observation was to get outside and just listen for frogs, find a ditch, find any place nearby, and just listen to frogs. And there's a frog sound, frog call app that, again, the older students, or if you're with a parent, Bill, I love that, get outside with the family, this is a big deal. You can listen to the frog calls and see if you can identify what they are. Now in the fall, you can use that for migratory birds, pull out the Merlin app. You can take pictures using iNaturalist, and maybe somebody will identify for you the items that you're finding. Look at seed dispersal, look at, oh, we found acorns, we found, other seeds that are being dispersed this time. So that's another, while that doesn't sound invasive species, or then you take it back into the classroom, you try to identify, were these natives, were they non-natives, that kind of thing, and learn a little bit more about the species that you found. The last one, which is part of the human impacts on the environment, it's part of a unit that is themed with lake sturgeon. And students are going to be looking at the geology of the Great Lakes, the formation of the Great Lakes.
There's some really good stuff in here, Fred. Yeah.
That lakes.
Oh,
and so with that in mind, when they will have already done a timeline, and that timeline will be for their place, for their area. Here's what's happened over the last 200 in this area. And that amount of time was chosen because lake sturgeon can live to be 150 years old, looking at their place. So then they go outside and they are looking around to try to figure out what is unique about my place. What is different compared to, make some observations. If I went to a different school, if I went across town, if I went to a beach, what is special about my place that makes it unique compared to other places? So again, that gives them that sense of place. So I think I like covered all of those three, but you desperately just have to go to these links that Bill will share with you and see the whole packages. They're standalone and they have, you know, kids can run them, you know, with minimal teacher input or lots of teacher input. And they have everything a teacher and a student needs. There you go. I got 8 seconds left. 6 seconds left.
Well done.
All right. Now I
Uh,
have vacation because I'm in Maine, so I have to go back to vacation.
and thank you so much for spending a little bit of your vacation with us.
It was great spending time with you guys. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Cass, can you present the first of your two today?
Yeah, thumbs up. Everyone can hear me okay? So my activity is a bird sleuth explorer's guide, which I've used with classrooms. Actually, it started off as a STEM activity where the kids use cereal boxes to create their own bird houses at their homes. And we did this in the wintertime, got some seeds, put them in the bird boxes, and then starting doing some observations. So it's, again, Bird Sleuth Explorer's Guide. And you can get free downloads or you can pay to purchase copies of it. And the one that I really like is the bird search one. It's page 6. And the reason why I like this one is it helps kids just understand the differences between birds and not so much focus the kids on naming birds. You might get a lot of students that are very interested in doing that and being able to get the common names for all these birds, and that's great. But you just want the kids to understand that there will be birds that will be coming to the bird feeders. It gets the kids outside, or it could allow the kids to look outside in different conditions to be able to see the birds that come to the bird feeder. So again, Bird Sleuth Explorer's Guide is online. It's done through Cornell and really great activities.
Thank you, Cass. Okay, Becky has a couple too. Her first one. Go ahead, Becky.
Hi, everyone. So I teach young fives. I'm an early childhood educator. Hi, Mike. And this activity with insects kind of came from a bunch of different resources: Academy of Natural Resources, the Mayo Conference, MSTA, a little bit on our own. Insects are a big thing that we do each spring, and unfortunately we got shut down right before we do that. So this is an intro to insects. I've done this with young fives all the way through adults. It's really fun. And basically it's connecting that insect, which often my little kids are very afraid of, and breaking it down into what makes an insect. So we start with building an insect and dressing up a person, right? And I bet many of you have done that before. I've used things that I find on a garage sale, like an old armor Halloween costume, or nylon stuffed with newspaper for legs. And anyway, we dress them up, we talk about all the different parts, they get a kick out of it, they laugh, they think it's funny. We also have a great song that goes to head, shoulders, knees, and toes, which I would love to sing to you right now, but I'll hold off on that till we're in person and you can sing along. And a diagram, if you want, they can build the insect with you. Now, you can do that in or out. The cool thing was this spring, I did this lesson on our Seesaw, which is our way of getting curriculum across our virtual way. And then I sent them outside and they built the insects out of safe found materials, which were things that we had worked on all year, finding safe materials in nature. And so the insects that they built were cool. They had rocks, leaves, twigs, lots of different things that they found out in their yards and their gardens. And they sent me pictures. And I had them record the different, so they would point and tell me the different parts of an insect. So it was cool. We got them outside, we connected back to nature, and hopefully got rid of a little bit of that fear for them with insects.
Awesome, thank you. Now, what I like about this, Ashley has a slightly different take on building insects and stuff too. And it was neat to have two similar things, but with different ideas, just to show how you can go different ways. So Ashley, go ahead.
Was Becky done? I thought she had more than one thing. Is that
Yeah,
it?
but the other one comes later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so mine was similar to Becky's. We do a lot of programs at the Farmington Hills Nature Center where we use loose nature parts. So one of our main messages when we do our STEM and nature and our engineering design programs is to design for disassembly or being responsible engineers and doing things sustainably. So using loose nature parts is a really great way to do that. And so kids will get that message that like, you don't just build something and then like throw it in the garbage, like, you know, what happens to it when you're done. So the loose nature parts that we use, just like Becky mentioned, to build insects making sure they have all of their, the criteria and constraint, just like you do when you're doing a engineering and design program. So making sure that your insect has 3 body parts, the head, thorax, abdomen, making sure that you have 6 legs, antenna, eyes, and then there's some optional things like having wings or making it colorful or adding mouth parts. So making sure you're adding that in and then giving them time to design, redesign. So, you know, ways that you can modify that for older kids is to really have them more into the design process prior to building an insect so that they're deciding what their parts are going to be and drawing it out first, and then designing it out of parts and then maybe redesigning it or adding in challenges like how much weight, you know, if you were going to have, how much weight can your insect hold, or how big can you make it, how small, how tall. And this can be applied to any structure. So that would be like maybe designing a tower and making it have the same parts of a tree, like trunks and branches and leaves. Designing bridges or wildlife crossings, how much can it hold? Can wildlife fit underneath it? So we've done the same thing. So all using loose nature parts. And then when the project is done, those parts are put back in nature. So that part of it's really important. So if you don't have time for your student to find the parts and you're supplying them, then they're sorting them back into the spaces where they got them from. But, you know, in this case, if you're doing it in a remote learning setting, encouraging your student to go out into their backyard or their schoolyard or a nearby park and responsibly collecting loose parts. So talking to them a little bit about how you can be good earth protectors and how to responsibly collect fallen nature items and not things that are alive. And then building those things. And then a great way to share it with a class or to get credit would be to take pictures and then to share it with your class or your teacher, and then disassemble it. I did have a couple other ways that you can modify or to supplement, I guess, the lesson. So after the insect is built and you need to put the parts back out in nature, encouraging your students to have time for reflection. So explaining to them maybe what a sit spot is, or choosing a special spot outside to sit and have some reflection. So maybe giving them some questions like, do you have a new appreciation for insects? How can you help insects thrive? What are some things you noticed when you were gathering parts to build your insect outside? So either doing that as a journaling activity or drawing or writing a poem, something like that, to add in that reflection time to the activity, I think is really important. And also even just using that as an art activity too, making things like we like to call magic carpets or patterns in nature, and being able to share that with their classmates. I think students feel really empowered and excited when they can share some really creative like work of art that they were able to create. Do you know if we're able to do like a screen share, like just to share a picture of like one of the insects, Bill, or does that not work on here?
I don't have everything up right now. It's a screenshot, anything, and
I just had a picture on my desktop, but it doesn't matter. Basically, it's just the other thing to mention too is we don't use any glue or tape or dough or anything like that to hold the insect together. So everything is just built on the ground and then taken apart. So if you're having trouble visualizing it, it's just basically putting things together, you know, without glue or dough or anything like that, just using fallen nature items. So that was it.
Thank you. Heather, Forest Health Lab.
See here. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Peterson. I teach in Holt right next door to Bill. So he is my cool, you know, resident animal person, and I get to be kind of the resident plant person. And this is a shout out to Joan, because everything I'm going to share today is really from the forest management classes and the forestry classes I took at Michigan Tech. We learned how to do a forest management plan and a forest health plan. So I have a document that I just don't know if it got uploaded to the folder yet, but it will later. That's a lab that I do with my botany students that are in high school. And really, you can do this with any level of kid. It's just going outside and taking a look at just even a section of grass. It could be a section in the woods, or it could be an area that has a tree or not. But helping kids realize that they can take a look at just sampling plants. Like I've done a quadrat before, where you take a hula hoop or just a meter stick and have them make a quadrat, and then they just identify plant number 1, plant number 2, even if they don't know the names of it. And then they count up about how many they think or what percentage is covering that area. In botany, I step it up a little bit more, and you can see that in the forest health lab. But one of the biggest things too is just getting them to take a look at all the creatures that are living together to support this area. And that we have, like, obviously the ground level up a little bit, the canopy level, how they can look up and measure, you know, canopy cover. There's so many different things you can do. And I think you can bring it down a level and up a level. And lastly, I think the biggest thing, if you're a classroom teacher, and even if you're at a nature center and you're trying to reinforce curriculum, is just claim, evidence, reasoning. Can they make a claim? Can they back it up with some evidence and have some reasoning? But you'll see a lot of things in that forest health lab where they look at, like, the amount of lichens on a tree, or they might look at the soil coverage and how much light is coming in and how much canopy is blocking maybe the understory. And there's a lot of things you can talk about. How does that impact the animals in the area too?
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, mushrooms.
All right. So I have middle school students out mushroom hunting, and we did this last spring during the remote learning at a time when we had a lot of rain and the temperatures were about right for spring mushrooms. But really what we did could be applied in the fall as well. And so there's a video that I have put the link in from the Learn Your Land. It's Adam Harrington. He's quite a well-known mushroomer, and it's a great video about, like, just starting to learn mushrooming. And then there's a whole worksheet that I put together with the times of, like, where we are in the video with questions, so students could go back and forth, but just to help them understand, like, what types of things they need to look for on a mushroom to be able to go out and identify it. And really my big point of the lesson is to get them outside. I take a page from Mary Oliver's poem and say, you know, pay attention, be amazed, and then tell about it. So go out and look for fantastic things in your place, and hopefully you'll find some mushrooms if, you know, I'm assigning it at the right time of the year when we've had a little rain. And then have them learn a little bit about the mushrooms, and then just go out with their phone or a camera or some kind of device to take pictures. And then I'm just asking them to put them on, you know, I have a couple examples in the folder that include, like, a collage pic one student put in, and another one did, I think, slides. But anyway, they really, oh, and then I also say, if there are no mushrooms, find other cool stuff. Like, really, my point is just looking closely, being amazed about what they find in nature, and then communicating in some way.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I'm next. Okay. So looking at, I put 3 things here. The first one is the characteristics of life. I did this the other day. I had kids go out the first day of school in biology, and they had to find 3 living things, 3 non-living things. And they had to list what all the living things had in common and all the non-living things had in common, and if there was any overlap. So all that is it's a Venn diagram where they have to try to figure out some characteristics of life, which is really the intro to the whole first unit in biology. The second thing I have, I teach a zoology class, which tends to be rather specific, but we do a lot of stuff outside where we do the job of wildlife biologist, and that's been kind of denied to us. I can't do recapture of frogs. I can't go catching turtles and trying to take pictures to see how they're migrating. I can't do any of the stuff I usually do, but I want them to get outside. So I'm taking a structure function approach to it. And I told them this the other day. I go, get out there now. You need to get a picture of a frog. You need to get a picture of a bird. You need to get a picture of a reptile. Get out there, do it, take pictures, and then there's a series of questions about that, about structure, function, specific things with birds' beaks and diets and stuff like that, and they have to identify it. And when I've come up with the idea, I teach high school, so they're going to cheat and find pictures online. I know they are. So what I made them do is that if they can't take a picture with them in it, so maybe holding a frog or something, they got to take a picture of them in the same area. So we'll see if they can outsmart me. They're going to try, but that might be fun. Yeah, the last one is a little bit involved. It's called making a species accumulation curve. And I'm going to definitely do this in the spring if we're still remote, because I think we can pull this off in yards. Kids go out, they grab 10 insects, not grab, they describe. I don't want them to bring them in. They have to describe the first 10 they see. If they see 10 ants, they write down 10 ants. If they see 2 bees, 6 black ants, 2 brown ants, they describe it the best they can. And when they have these 10, they talk about how many different species of the 10 they have. And you end up making a graph of 10, and you take the average of everybody in the class. So this is really good for math, and I think you can do it at a lot of levels. Your x-axis is going to start off with 10, and you're going to do the average of how many different species each person got. So let's say the average was 5. Then you're going to have them pair up. And this is where hopefully we'll have Google Meet working so that we can actually pair people up, which don't get me started, but it's not starting until September, late September. So you pair them up and they compare how many different ones they have between the 2 of them. So now the x-axis is 20. There are 20 animals and they see how many different species they have amongst them. And then what's going to happen is you're going to combine them again, and 20 and 20 will be 40 total insects with 4 kids. And you keep doing it till you get the whole class and how many different animals. And what you get is a graph that should flatten out. And that flat spot, that's the biodiversity. And you can compare this from kids' yards. You can compare it to what would a desert look like? What would a rainforest look like? And you'll see this different level. I stole this from Costa Rica. We did it with plants on the roadside. And, you know, I'm an animal dude, so I turned it into insects. And they have to actually describe them well. So there's a little bit of skills in describing them critically. And there's a little bit of skill in doing a little bit of math. I think you could do it. It would take a few days, but I think it'd be fantastic at home. I've done it in class. I haven't tried it at home yet because we kind of ran out of time last year. So you'll probably need more description. It has everything together so that you could run it. But sometimes, you know, it's a little bit hard to describe how you set it up, but it's kind of cool to mathematize biodiversity. So that's what I got. All right. So these next 3 are earth science ones. Environmental science covers a wide range of stuff, and there's a lot of earth science, and these are fascinating. So Kathleen, landfills.
Hey everybody, I miss you guys too. I miss getting out and doing my informal education and tours and whatnot. So I've been trying to develop some online resources, and it's a big year in Michigan around solid waste disposal. And I know it's all about getting kids outdoors, but it's really important to get them connected to this thing we all do, which is generate waste and what an impact it has on our environment. So what I provided was some resources to teach about building a little landfill in their backyard or outside the school, whichever could work. And so the resources are designed to show, first of all, how landfills are built, because most people still have a perception that it's just a big open field that trucks randomly drive into, dump their waste, and leave. And it's much more engineered and designed. There's a really good resource by Teach Engineering, a STEM outline that's way more up your guys' alley, really formal curriculum for STEM. My tool, my little handout is just way informal to keep it simple. But teaching them about that, making sure that they understand, just because it magically disappears from the curb doesn't mean that it goes away. And there's a real disconnect in people's sense of reality around the waste that they generate. So getting them more connected to their impact on all of that, teaching them about landfills. You can also liken it to their under their bed or their closet, where they shove everything when they have no other place for it. And eventually they run out of room with that too. So a lot of conversation. I'm listed as a resource. Any one of you guys, if you don't know me, you're welcome to reach out to me to have discussion about how best to do it. I'm way informal, and I tend to be less technical than you guys might be, but I have a lot of good wisdom I can share with you guys if that matters. So is that it? Did I do okay, Bill?
Awesome.
All right.
Excellent. Eileen, stormwater.
Hi, I'm Eileen. I work for a local watershed organization, and I'm going to share an activity with you that I've done informally many times in many different places with all different age groups. And there are, I know, some teachers on the call who have done this activity. And the formal, like Kathleen, I tend to have the informal side of things, but there was a formal write-up of this lesson that was done last year by the Grand Rapids Public Museum and Groundswell. So that's what's linked in the document. It has all of the curricular connections and exactly how to lay it out in your classroom. So for those of you who are classroom teachers, that'll be really useful. One thing, I want to make a connection to Kathleen, because she said it's so important that we understand that our garbage doesn't just go away. And the same thing is true of water. So when we're talking about stormwater, especially in urban areas, people don't often think about where that water goes. And so this activity is investigating patterns of stormwater runoff to understand how water moves through Earth systems and what kinds of pollution it can pick up as it moves through those systems, and what kinds of impacts that could have on those systems. And so it starts with some introductory work around, watersheds and pollution and runoff, just kind of definitions of terms and understanding that, which is something that you could do either synchronously in the classroom as a lesson, or you could use existing materials that are available. There's some links in my document that has videos that you could use that were created by Groundswell under some previous lessons that talk about clean water and watersheds that you can use in introduction. And then you send your students outdoors to investigate patterns where they live. And so it's really a mapping activity where you would have them create a map of their place. And that could be a map that they create from scratch, that they draw. It could also be, I've done this many times, where we've just printed out a Google map image and have them make notations on that map for things that they notice that are important in relation to runoff and stormwater. So things like, where's all the storm drains? Do you see an outfall, like a pipe coming out somewhere? And then they would also identify direction of flow, slope, and then things like potential pollutants on there. So do you see a lot of, are you near a dog park where there might be a lot of pet waste, or is it a bunch of parking lot there where there might be car stuff? And have them identify that on the map, and then come back as a class and look at what they found and use that as a springboard for developing solutions. So the outdoor component of that could be done at the student's home. And what I really like about this activity is that it doesn't matter if they have a yard or a neighborhood or a green space really outside. And from an equity standpoint, I think that's really important right now, because there's a lot of kids who are stuck in homes and they don't have a park or anything that's nearby to get to. So in many ways, this activity is actually a lot more interesting if you live in a highly urbanized area and you go out and all you see is impervious surface. So it's a really great activity for those of you who are working with urban students and you want to get them outside, but you feel kind of this hesitancy about telling them they have to go find a green space. So all of the resources that are needed to do this lesson are available in the document. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. My contact info is there as well.
Thank you, Eileen. Erica, you have a couple for us.
Yes.
You have
Hi,
a minute.
everyone. Hi, everyone. Wow, this is great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Bill, thank you for putting this together. I know there's people have got a lot on their plates these days, so this is excellent. My name is Erica Fye, and I work at Michigan Tech. I've worked with Joan Chatty at the Center for Science and Environmental Outreach for a long time. And the things I'm going to explain tonight were really developed out of reacting to the immediate response to kids being put at home, staying at home during the COVID crisis when it first hit. So this was a collaboration between the LSSI, the local ISD, and the Center for Science and Environmental Outreach, putting together a few lesson plans. And there's a thread to these. There's another part of this session that will be able to see all of those at the same time. But essentially what we wanted to do is have a driving question for an exploration that would get kids outside. Like, just get out into your backyard, whether it's urban, you have a forest in the backyard, and then have a question that's sort of driving your exploration. So in this instance, I'm a geologist. I love rocks. There's a whole bunch behind me right here. So the questions are, instead of just picking up a rock, be like, oh, rocks are rocks, they're all the same. And this is slated to more sort of like K through 2, but are rocks useful? Are all rocks the same? And what do the rocks look like in your own backyards? We're sending people out, and then you can have, ways for kids to look at, how does it feel? What are the colors? What are the shapes? What are the sizes? Is it gritty? Is it this? So there's a lot of things you could do in sort of a tactile sense. So in this instance, we're trying to get kids out. I developed sort of a paper video about being outside and looking at the rocks. So it's specific to rocks in the Keweenaw, but you could very easily do something similar in your own region. Another part of these explorations, so there's the overarching question that's driving the exploration. And then what we've done is we've recorded a teacher locally doing a first look activity, which is something that Margaret Holzschlag has developed as part of the big lesson activities. That's included in these lessons as well. But essentially, it's something that you would send your students outside and you could guide them. So if you are not able to be in the classroom, they hear your voice, you're driving questions like, what's the weather, what's the temperature, what's the wind direction, which way is east, just getting your kids oriented, but you're doing it. Then they can be sent outside to do the actual outdoor exploration. And in these explorations, we also want to include things like songs. There's a great song about the rock cycle, which is included in this activity. And then optional activities to visit local areas that have waterfalls, so you could go with your family and do something as a family to get outside. And then we also include readings. Some of these are things that are being read on YouTube, so kids can access those as well. That's the geology lesson, really getting people to think that no, not all rocks are the same. Let's think about that. The other lesson that I would like to share is called Exploring Fall with the 5 Senses. And this is a really simple exercise. And full disclosure, this is something we had developed in a response to COVID in the spring. And I just revamped it for you so that it's like ready to go as a fall series as well. So again, using that overarching question, how can we tell when it's fall? And so this lesson, essentially, we're using that first look activity again, but then having students go outside and thinking about with all of their senses, and there's a link to a really great description of how to engage your students in that way, but using all of your senses when you're outside. What does it smell like right now? What's the temperature feeling like? What is the sound of the leaves are under your feet? All of those kind of things. And so what we did is we put some links in for journals, so you could make your own journal, and so that the students could actually record themselves, drawings. They are encouraged to take photos and sound recordings. And although I can't show it to you, there is a link to this in the document itself. What we encourage students to do across our region is to take photos when they're outside. And so the Google document would say, something I smelled was this, something I saw was this, that was a sign of fall. I know that it's fall because I smelled this. And they could then add those to a Google document, and then you could actually use that as a gallery walk. If you're at home and everyone is virtual, you could do a virtual gallery walk of those images that can be uploaded to the Google form. So that was sort of the basis of these lessons. And again, with the fall lesson, there are books and readings and other resources that you can use for those. So thanks.
Thank you, Erica. Natalie.
I have my timer set for 2 minutes. Hi all, Natalie from DNR. I teach teachers, that's my job. And I wanted to bring you a little early elementary spin on what Erica kind of discussed in her second activity. I bullied them into letting me share the screen. So I'm gonna show you, I'm a visual learner, like my boss Kevin, who's on the call, likes to say. So I wanted to show you guys this so you would be able to do it on your own and understand what I mean. Sidewalk chalk is my favorite thing in my arsenal. So every kid can do this in their own driveway. It also lends itself well to urban audiences.
Natalie, your sound isn't on, I don't think.
Of course it's not, even though I run Zoom every day. I totally forgot
yeah.
to push the button. You know how that goes. Share computer sound.
There you
doing
go.
it over. It's only a minute long, so I won't kill you guys here. There you go. How about now? This is the reality of sharing in this day and age, right? I even made a note to do it. Click button. Hey everybody, I'm Natalie Elkins, an education specialist with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Today I wanted to show you a little sensory observation activity you can do in your driveway or in a safe parking lot space with just sidewalk chalk and yourself. The first thing you need to do is gather your kiddos, some sidewalk chalk, and draw this 4-square observation sheet on your driveway. We have a space for sight, hearing, smelling, and touch. Taste is excluded on purpose because there can be dangerous things to taste outside. Even with very young children, you can start out by just 5 minutes at a time, having them sit very quietly and use their senses to think of all the things they're hearing, seeing, smelling, and that they can touch. They're going to come back then and record those things in each square. After their 5-minute observation time, the kids can then record what they saw, touched, smelled, or heard in drawings or in words. I think one of the coolest things about this project is you can do it daily, and if you do it daily, you have a record going on in a nature journal in your very own community. Okay, so that's part 1. Part 2 is I stole this from Project Wild, Growing Up Wild, the Looking at Leaves observation sheet. So that's one of the links that'll eventually make it into Google Drive. If you Google Project Wild, you'll end up on this page, and you can see at the bottom, there is these links. Each of these links has its own set of 20 to 100 resource pages with free Copy Me pages, at-home connections that are translated to Spanish, careers that we are all involved in, environmental educator and biologist, etc. So, and it's free. This is the original sheet. I just, in COVID, said, hey, let's do it outside. And then lastly, I've got a pretty cool thing here that the DNR has done. If you're looking for follow-up, michigan.gov/nature at home. And I've compiled anything you guys have given me over the last 6 months is all linked here on this page. So you don't have to go back and try and find it. Videos and apps and projects and grade levels. That's it. I think that's 2 minutes.
Thank you. Joan.
Hi, is everything good? You can hear me? Great. Okay, this is really one of my favorite activities to do with the young ones. And it's called Leaf Look. It's comparison and sorting of leaves. It should be just about the perfect time of year or maybe in the next couple weeks. So this is an opportunity to engage your students either in math. It's great for math because there's so much comparison and order and measuring that they could do. Also great for science because we have to become observant about how leaves are different, which helps us with the identification of different types of trees. And then also being able to describe. So in English language arts, when we have students writing, one of the first things you want to develop their vocabulary and how they could describe something. And then art, really fun to wrap it up with art. So, and I have to say is I've used this activity a lot doing family forest nights, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I can do those online, but at any rate, you can save that for next year if you don't have a chance this year. Now, it's indoor or outdoor because you could bring all the leaves inside. So if it's a situation where it's not going to work in the future, you could do it that way. I think it would be really nice if the students can go, they could collect a bunch of leaves. Now we're talking that these are small children. It can be preschool, kindergarten, first or second grade. So if they are going to go outside, you have to remind them that they have to get their adults' permission before they go out. And probably always a good idea, no matter where they live, to go outside with an adult. Okay, so when they do go outside, they need some sort of collecting tub of sorts. So I don't have one of those regular shoebox tubs. Am I showing that enough that you guys can kind of see? It's just a yogurt container grabbed. It could be a little lunch paper bag would work, you know, a plastic bag. It, you know, nothing special is the point here. And they go out there and they would collect their leaves to bring in, or they could use them outside. One of the things we often use is a white sheet because it provides some nice contrast. And that is in particular if you have a small group of students or you have your entire class, you know, and you're able to sit outside with them. But I'm thinking of this in terms of, it's a great lesson for you to present online. They go out and get their leaves. Maybe you continue that lesson the next day. Okay, so now I think it'd be pretty fun for them to collect these leaves. And then they have to look at them. Sorry, I guess I'm looking kind of small on here, so I'm hoping that what you're seeing is bigger. Okay, so I just have a leaf here that looks to me like it's a thimbleberry leaf. And I would be asking them to tell me, describe it. And so they might tell me it's got some pointies, and they might say it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pointies. They could tell me the color of it. And they might even compare it to something like their hand. So we're just trying to get them to be observant. No right answers here. So description. Then we could ask the students how they might, what they could do, how they could compare them. So a couple examples here that okay, are you guys able to see these even though it doesn't looks funny to me? What do you think? Can you see that, Bill?
It's coming in and out, sort of.
It's because of your background setting, Joan. You turned
Background
off your
issue,
background. Yeah.
Oh, I won't change it now at this point, but I will try to remember to do that and look at that in the future. Okay, so there's a couple things that are happening here. You can see, the way I'm holding this, is that there should be, on this side, you can see a red leaf, this yellow leaf is falling over, and the green leaf. And I would love to be asking you, but what we'll notice here is the fact that there happen to be 3 green leaves and 1 yellow, 1 red. So fall is not too far along, right? They really haven't started changing very often. So we could do this activity again in 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks, and maybe we would really start to see this bar chart change. And of course the teacher could keep a copy, date it, and then be bringing it back for comparison so they can see what happens through the season. And the one, I also like the idea of using a Venn diagram for kids. And so in this one over here, sorry, we're gonna struggle, and I apologize that I didn't know that about the background part. But okay, so down below, we're gonna say, okay, there's 2 circles, if you know, for a Venn diagram. And we have 2 green leaves. Now, a Venn diagram tells us how 2 things might be the same and how they might be different. So looking at these, we could say they're the same because they are both green. I know that they're a little bit different shade of green, but they're different because one has smooth edges and the other one has the pointy edges. And it's even kind of like scissory between the points. So, so again, this is how are they the same? How are they different? And then again, up at the top, hopefully you can see it a little bit, is I have them arranged by size. So again, students will look at them, which ones are small, which ones are large. And what we want them to be thinking about, and I do want to point out that this first one here that's very, very tiny is a needle. because it's nice to remind students that needles on trees really are leaves. So again, we want them to be thinking about how things compare, and it's these characteristics that would help us identify a tree in the future. But like others have said before, we are certainly not focused on naming things at this point. We're really trying to develop those observation skills. And the wrap up here is, I love the book, it's called Look What I Did with a Leaf. And I'm hoping you can see this now, like it's a great and wonderful picture. And I actually wish I had that book right here with me, but some of you may have heard of it before. It's by Morteza E. Sohai, and that reference to the book will be in the lesson. But they make animals. So you can see I obviously just made something that might look like a sheep, but they would go out and find the animals that could represent the body, the head, the tail, the eyes, the legs. And these are really cool. And when they're all different colors a little bit later in the fall, it's a really fun little project. And another good book to read to students is Red Leaf, Yellow Leaf by Lois Ehlert. So I would like to wrap this up. And again, just reminding you that this is a great way to teach interdisciplinarily about science, math, English language arts, and art, and get kids making observations right in their backyard. They're going to find leaves like these ones I found. They were just on shrubs because the leaves haven't fallen off the tree. So anyway, those weren't available yet. But it's real simple materials as well. So anyone have any questions, or I bet some of you have some great ideas. I think it'd be fun for us to have a way to be able to add on to these lessons and add on other people's ideas. So thanks very much for the opportunity to share with you. And I hope some of you get a chance to use it. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Joan. Cass, you're back on.
Joan, great segue, because I just wanted to advocate that Belle Isle Nature Center with Detroit Zoological Society, they take laminated leaves and they allow kids to do an activity with a graph. So they can graph the leaves, and it's really cool to get the kids to think not just by shape, but maybe by color or by size, so that they're also categorizing in different ways. So great segue in saying, how can we add on to an activity like that?
Thanks.
So my activity is poetry, and I got it from Project Learning Tree. Just want to advocate for Project Learning Tree and share my screen really quickly. And so Project Learning Tree, they're doing an online course right now, which I'm actually doing to recertify for the EEC. And you can see it's the online training, and then you get an electronic book. But I have a printed copy because I've already done Project Learning Tree, so it's just updated. So through Project Learning Tree, though, the activity I'm sharing with you is poetry. And the reason why I chose this one is because it's free and it's online. What I like to do and share with the teachers is the first activity, which is adopt a tree, where the students in their homes have an opportunity to choose a tree that they're going to observe for a long period of time and take ownership of that tree, really good at making observations, seeing what insects are starting to crawl on it, the birds that are there, how it's changing its life cycle. Maybe it's a flower now. It's got really big leaves. So that was a really great activity for them to do in the spring. And then to add on to it, I realized that the teachers, when they first started doing the remote learning, they were sectioning off the reading and the writing and the social studies and the science. And I was thinking, well, you can just kind of, us teachers are like, well, you can just flow it all in, right? All of us science teachers are like, just do it all together. So this is just a writing activity. And what's really great is it has it sectioned off already for the students. Again, this is free online to help support them with putting in a noun or putting in an adjective. Then you could up the ante. You can have them do it a haiku. You could have them do it in the shape of a tree. And then when Natalie was talking and doing her sensory thing on the her driveway, I thought, well, you could do a poem like right in your driveway, and it would be really cool too. So again, it's on Project Learning Tree Poetry, and it's a free one, a free lesson for you to be able to pick from and use for your language arts when you're doing your science content.
Thank you, Cass. Becky, you're back.
I'm back. So I'm going to jump on the sensory bandwagon here with scavenger hunts. So these are from Tracy Page. If you've never met Tracy, she currently works at the DNR. You might know her from Sam in the Classroom or Academy of Natural Resources. Previous life, she was at our DeVries Nature Center here in Owasso, and she's one of the people who really helped me organize getting my little kids outside. And so these activities I use all the time, especially as we're doing our senses, but just when we go outside, because kids are sometimes just so focused on not as what is going on around them. So the scavenger hunts are basic, from colors and shapes to a little bit more complicated. I'm sure you can find ways to extend them for whatever grade level that you work with. For our remote learning this year, I actually took our scavenger hunt and made a virtual activity on our Seesaw platform where they can take their iPad outside with them and take pictures of what they find and submit it in their photo journal for the kids to see as a gallery that they can walk through. We focus a lot on language and describing words because we like to just point when we're 4 or 5. So the scavenger hunt is a great way for us to develop our language skills. And also, one other piece that sometimes I do when we're in person, and I'm going to encourage remotely, is I have a bunch of paint chips from Home Depot hardware store, and they'll take the paint chips with them, and then they're discovering colors, and they're describing the range of colors that they're finding and comparing these to what other kids are finding, to the basic colors that they may know. So there's a lot of extensions that you can do with a very, very simple scavenger hunt.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Ty Cotter.
Thanks, Bill. So this is a lesson, well, I developed it because Bill asked me to, but also I think that it fits a virtual school situation well, and it's good for early in the school year. So I was looking for something that I could do with my kids right now, and I teach 4th grade. So I also was really thoughtful about you know, not everybody has the same access to nature, so we really have to consider that. So basically the point of the lesson is just to get kids outside and to begin kind of practicing observation skills and noticing details. So they're gonna go outside and just find something, and then you could adapt this and fill it in with all sorts of adjectives, I suppose, something neat or unusual or something they don't know what it is. And our kids all have Chromebooks, so whatever device that you have, they can take a photograph with that. And I'd like to have my kids then post that to Padlet, because something else that we're doing this time of year is teaching tons of different online tools. So we kind of put those two together. And they can post that picture to Padlet, and then they would also have the option to, I could have some questions for them to answer. So Heather had talked about claim evidence reasoning. So, you know, just answering things like, what do you think that is? Or, and why do you think that? You know, what evidence do you have that it's a gum wrapper, or, you know, whatever other natural thing that they may have found. So they could just kind of answer some basic questions about that, that would kind of encourage observing, and post that in the Padlet, and then everybody can see. It's like a virtual bulletin board, essentially. So that's kind of the deal. That's it.
Thank you, Ty. Pam.
Hey. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Pam Howard. I'm an environmental education specialist with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And I'm speaking tonight from my experience as a non-traditional educator. I work with scouts, the general community, projects working with invasive plant removal and like our cemetery and our local community and that kind of thing. And I'm a firm believer in active learning. I know how much it helped my son who's autistic and a lot of the scouts. Once you got their minds engaged in something, even if they were the most hyper kid around, they suddenly began to learn what you were working with them on a nature hike. And nature hikes are wonderful for K through 12 or and older, and for those who are physically challenged, or like I said, behaviorally challenged. So, and with a nature hike, it teaches all sorts of great basic things like biology, even physical fitness, sensory engagement, nature studies, conservation, and stewardship skills, all these important great things that you want to get across, but those ADHD kids just have a hard time learning because they are bouncing off the wall. So the idea with the nature hike with a project attached is that the nature hike is just an interlude to the project. It's a means to get them to focus, to engage those mental synapses. And any good project involves prep work, such as if you want to do a nature hike. And by the way, nature hike, I say, is a general term. It doesn't have to be at your local park. You could be walking down a city block and looking at the plants growing between the cracks in the sidewalk. Like even my not favorite one this time of year, ragweed. I mean, you can look and explain, how did they have this amazing ability to grow in the crack in the sidewalk? I mean, even invasive plants teach us a whole lot of things. So you have prep work if you want to do a project and working with the class. So the easiest types of things to do with the class would be like a trash pickup, or maybe even removing an invasive plant such as purple loosestrife, because it's very simple to do. It's I mean, anybody if they're physically challenged, they can still, because purple loosestrife growing in a wet area pulls up easily. It works well. Or other easily identified invasive type plants. Also trail management. And trail management, again, we're walking down the sidewalk. There's maybe bushes and shrubs in the local community area that maybe need trimming back so people can access those sidewalks easier. But I mean, so a nature hike, when I think about that, it's a broad term, a means to get the kids out into the environment. But that, again, I think these types of projects are priceless because of all the skills you learn while doing it. While you're working at these plants, and the kids are engaging their eyes and looking at the shapes of the leaves, identifying the leaves. They're learning about how plants grow with alternate leaves and opposite leaves. I always think maples, ashes, and dogwoods, they're mad. So opposite leaves. Anyway, I believe it's a great way to engage a kid's mind, help them prepare for learning. It's a sensory stimulating tool. It helps kids with behavioral issues and autism to relax and be ready to learn. And because it's good for kids with short attention spans. Plus, for me, working for the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, I really like the protecting of the environment, conservation skills. These things are priceless and they'll last with the kid his entire life. Done.
Thank you, Pam. Jen, wrap this up.
Thanks, Bill. My name is Jennifer Dubay. I'm with Chippewa Nature Center. I'm an environmental educator. I am also a certified interpretive guide through NAI. And Bill labeled it sensing nature. I think of it a little bit more of that, but it's basically observation skills, beginning scientist 101. So you could use this lesson for anywhere from preschool all the way up to high school, with giving things that are very simple in your own kitchen or your backyard. Piece of rope, hula hoop, put those out in nature, give the kids an observation window. And if they're young, have them start looking and feeling and touching, so sensing the things that are around them. As you go up through the grades, like in high school and middle school, have them start documenting the types of soil. What does it feel like? Potentially, what's the weather outside? Also with that, have them start counting the number of insects they find or the number of plants, and then take it even a step farther for your middle school and high school kiddos. Have them start doing a class observation, and what did we find here? What did we find there? If you want to continue this all year long, have them use the same spot throughout the seasons and have them see how things change over time. So it's more than just observation, it's also data collection for them in the long run, and then they'll be more appreciative of their environment. If they don't have a space to go out to, have them use the window in their backyard. They'll notice different things about in their environment that they may have never noticed before. Commonly, Natalie likes to use sit spots at A&R. And that sit spot would be a great one to get them to start using their senses and looking at what's around them. That's all I got, Bill.
Thank you, Jen. Wow. James Burke was a guy, he had a show called Connections. I think he wrote a book called The Pinball Effect about how one thing leads to another. And, you know, my mind's exploding right now with all these different ideas and connections. All of these, I gave you a link to my Google Drive that has the folder with all this stuff in it. It sounds like people want to add more things, and if I screwed something up, which is more than likely, I can fix this so that we'll have access to it. Eventually, we're going to have a new website for Mayo so that we can store a bunch of stuff and have resources for you. So it will eventually end up there. I need to thank Bridget for running the Zoom. I need to thank Elizabeth Pike for helping with the whole registration thing. If you know me at all, you know technology and me, we don't always get along. So the fact that we didn't have any major blow-ups, I'm going to consider a minor miracle. Most of all, I want to thank all the people who volunteered to share their time and their work. I am inspired and humbled, and I will most non-abashedly steal everything that you've given me today. I have no qualms about it. To all my Mayo members, I miss you dearly. I look forward to the day where we will be around the fire again. For all of you who have not joined Mayo yet, you have a taste of what it's like. Imagine all these people sitting around a campfire, sharing different ideas, and just without any, you know, sense of self. It was all about trying to get everybody better. Imagine sitting out north and hearing a barred owl call, and all of a sudden you hear 7 other people try to do it as well. Not as good as the real barred owl, except for Dorothy's. Dorothy's is always spot on. It's the way it is. These are people in Mayo that we're teachers, we're nature center workers, DNR people, zoos, universities. They have expertise that you can't find everywhere. I love this group. I keep coming back because I get things from different people, from different walks of life. I become a better person every time I hang out with them. Thanks a lot. I learned a bunch. I hope everybody else did too. Have a good evening.